Rebirth, the 5th year of forced marriage to Xiaojing. His childhood sweetheart returned. Pregnant. In my previous life, I spread the news of her elopement far and wide. Unable to bear the rumors, she fled to a distant land. From that day onward, Xiaojing never once looked at me kindly. In this life, I brought her into my home and treated her with kindness. Then, before Xiaojing returned home, I left without looking back. From now on, we part ways. Xiaojing was originally a young master from a prominent family. When he was severely injured and in distress, I bought him as a male slave. After he was cleaned up, he revealed a face of unparalleled beauty, leaving me spellbound. I forced him to marry me by offering him a white steamed bun. I also used the excuse of hiring someone to treat his leg to blackmail him and obtained his chastity, which many women in the capital had coveted. I thought that was what it meant to be husband and wife. But I didn't know that a real husband and wife should love each other. Of course, there should also be a marriage certificate, registration at the government office, and all sorts of other formalities. Xiaojing never told me any of this. I only found out after I attended a banquet and was ridiculed by others. They looked down on me with disdain, pointing and whispering, "Does she really think she's Mrs. Xia now? She's probably not even a concubine. A concubine at least gets a few taels of silver a month." When I returned home, I had a fierce argument with Xiaojing. Xiaojing said nothing. I fiercely grabbed his waistband, tore at his clothes, and humiliated him, just like when he was still my male slave. But now, he wouldn't let me have my way. At the last moment, he pushed me away, put on his robe expressionlessly, and coldly said, "Zhao Chuinyang, you can still stay here. I've done all I can for you." With that, he walked away. I was left alone, sitting on the ground in disarray. Yes, he had longed to cut me into 1,000 pieces. Actually, Xiaojing and I had a relationship. I thought those were sweet days. It was the first time for both of us. We were always together, clinging to each other whenever we had a moment. Though I was a male slave, I couldn't bear to see my man suffer. Most of the farm work and heavy labor fell on me. After returning to the capital, I thought everything would be as before. Until one moonlit night, Zhou Yingyuan knocked on the door. She had eloped with the family's stable hand and returned pregnant, with nowhere to go. It was said that Xiaojing had been severely injured while fighting enemy troops at the border. And upon hearing the news of Zhou Yingyuan's elopement, he had lost his mind and been led astray. And then I ended up with him. In that sense, I should thank Zhou Yingyuan. Later, Xiaojing abandoned me because of her. It was truly karma. The news of their elopement spread like wildfire. Zhou Yingyuan, filled with shame and anger, fled in the dead of night. That was the first time Xiaojing laid a hand on me. He choked me, saying that if anything happened to Zhou Yingyuan, I would die too. But I survived. I lived to give birth. It was a difficult labor. When I became pregnant, I was overjoyed. It was Xiaojing who initiated it. He clung to me desperately, his eyes burning with a fire that seemed to want to consume me. I thought it was desire, but I didn't know it was hatred. I thought he had finally stopped being angry with me. But when I was in excruciating pain, I heard his familiar voice say, "When Yingyue left, she was also pregnant. You should suffer what she suffered so you can understand what it means to feel someone else's pain." So that's how it was. I wanted to tell him that I regretted it. I shouldn't have been so cruel to drive Zhou Yingyue away. I shouldn't have been so stubborn and clung to his side. Regret filled my heart. I even regretted getting pregnant with this child. At that moment, I couldn't muster any strength. The midwife said the baby couldn't come out and would die inside me. To save the baby, they had to cut open my stomach. They asked Xiaojing whether to save the mother or the child. I didn't hear Xia Zhang's answer, but I could guess. Tears slid down the corners of my eyes. Through 2 lifetimes. I opened my eyes once more. I saw Zhou Yingyue looking at me warily. Who are you? I'm looking for Xia Zhang. The full moon hung high in the sky. The night breeze caressed my face. I had returned to that day. I remembered my answer from my previous life. I raised my chin and said, I am Xia Zhang's wife. Now I realize I was wrong. I was just an orphaned country girl who didn't belong here. Xia Zhang never belonged to me either. It was all a dream. I should have woken up long ago. In this life, let everything return to its rightful place. I stepped aside to let Zhou Yingyue enter the door and smiled. I am Xie Gongzi's maid. The border wars have temporarily ceased. Xia Zhang still often has to go out to suppress bandits. I poured tea for Zhou Yingyue and comforted her. The young master has gone to kill bandits. I have already sent someone to inform him. If he knows you have returned, he will be overjoyed. Zhou Yingyue was dressed in plain clothes. Her expression filled with fear, and there were several scars on her exposed wrists. However, one could still tell that she had once been a pampered young lady. Even in such a dire situation, she still had flowers pinned in her hair, pearls dangling from her earrings, and lip balm on her lips. Unlike me, who has always been plain and unadorned, Zhou Yingyue and Xia Zhang were a match made in heaven. I once saw a portrait of Zhou Yingyue in Xia Zhang's study. Xia Zhang was a military officer and didn't like to write poetry or paint. Yet he had personally painted over 100 portraits of his beloved. If it weren't for me meddling, they would have eventually reunited. Wouldn't they? I hurriedly instructed the maids not to call me lady anymore. This courtyard isn't very large, and there aren't many maids. But I was naive and thought this was Xia Zhang's home. Later, I learned that the red gate with the golden plaque, the white walls, and the jade steps were the true Xia family residence. Xia Zhang had treated me as a concubine and placed me here. This was the most remote villa under Xia Zhang's name. When he was young, Xia Zhang had secretly brought Zhou Yingyue here to play. Therefore, when Zhou Yingyue saw the lights on inside, she accidentally stumbled upon the place. Everything seemed predestined. Only I remain, struggling in this ugly existence. I wanted to atone for my sins, so I tried my best to treat Zhou Yingyue well. She was still a noble lady at heart and accepted my service without hesitation. Yet I still cannot get used to having maids help me change clothes or bathe. However, for some reason, Zhou Yingyue's gaze toward me always carries hostility. One day, a maid accidentally slipped and called me madam. She glared at me fiercely. I didn't know how to explain it, so I blurted out, "The young master is so handsome that I can't help but admire him. Sometimes, when he's not around, I play with the maids and let them call me that." Zhou Yingyue's expression softened slightly. She told me to brew a pot of hot tea, the kind that's scalding hot. I looked at my hands, which were red from the heat, and sighed inwardly. I felt guilty toward her, and to be honest, my hands were calloused, so it didn't really hurt. After a long while, Zhou Yingyue finally let me go. As I was leaving, she suddenly spoke. "Some people are born with a lowly fate, don't covet what you shouldn't." I turned to look at her and said, "Miss Zhou, I've never thought my life was lowly. But you're right, I won't covet Xia Zhang anymore. May you and Xia Zhang end up together." Zhou Yingyue was about to say something, but her gaze shifted toward the entrance. Xia Zhang, covered in dust and fatigue, was standing there. I didn't know when he had returned. Actually, by the end of my previous life, I hadn't seen Xia Zhang much anymore. He was busy with official matters. He was also busy searching for Zhou Yingyue's whereabouts. Our affair and my pregnancy were merely a way for him to vent his anger while searching for Zhou Yingyue, to compensate for the pain of losing the one he loved and being unable to find her. Time is relentless. Looking at Xia Zhang's face, I felt a sense of strangeness. Fortunately, he didn't notice me either. He brushed past me and rushed toward Zhou Yingyue. His eyes were filled with surprise and tenderness. He wanted to ask Zhou Yingyue how she had been all these years, how the coachman was, and why she had returned now. But he couldn't utter a single word. Zhou Yingyue's eyes welled up with tears, and she couldn't say a word either. In the end, Xia Zhang repeated over and over, "As long as you're back. That's all that matters. That's all that matters." I stood there watching the scene unfold, feeling little pain. Perhaps the pain had numbed me, leaving only a chill. After a long time, Xia Zhang seemed to notice me. He furrowed his brows, looking at me as if I were an unwelcome guest. "Zhao Chunyang." He saw my hand, which was red from being burned, and instinctively reached out to me. "What happened to your hand?" I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Xia Zhang's hand paused, his brows furrowing in surprise. Zhou Yingyue stared intently at me, afraid I would say something I shouldn't. She was overthinking it. Even if I did say something, Xia Zhang wouldn't believe me. He regarded her as a treasure. How could he care about the dust and turmoil around him? Just like in the previous life, I was oblivious and welcomed Zhou Yingyue into the house. When Xia Zhang returned, he rushed straight toward Zhou Yingyue. Only then did I realize something was wrong. When I rushed over, Xia Zhang grabbed a teacup and threw it at me. It missed my head by an inch, nearly causing me to bleed profusely. He said, "Zhao Chuinyan, I thought you were merely unworthy of attention. But I never expected you to be so malicious. You knew she was pregnant and still treated her so harshly." Zhou Yingyue pulled on his sleeve and said she didn't blame me. I didn't quite understand. Was he dissatisfied with Zhou Yingyue's betting? Or did he think her food wasn't good enough? Or was it because there was no charcoal fire in the winter? But wasn't I living the same kind of life? It was much better than before. I wanted to have a serious talk with Xia Zhang, but he had already left. He carried Zhou Yingyue and took her to his other mansion, a place much more luxurious than this. Later, it was endless arguments between me and his blatant favoritism. In the end, one day, I heard about that scandal in the inner chambers. In a fit of rage, I blurted out at the banquet, addressing Zhou Yingyue in front of everyone. "Do you not have a husband of your own? Why are you clinging to my husband all day long? Where is your husband? The stable hand?" I looked at Zhou Yingyue with a smug expression as her face turned pale. The next moment, Xia Zhang rushed over. The disgust and murderous intent in his eyes made the fleeting sense of satisfaction in my heart vanish instantly. I suddenly recalled this moment. Xia Zhang's face became clearer and clearer. It overlapped with the Xia Zhang of this life. When he came to look at the burn on my hand again, I was so scared that I backed away repeatedly. The fear in my eyes made Xia Zhang freeze in place. In an instant, I regained my senses. In this life, I would never again get caught up in this hopeless infatuation. I tried to calm myself down and smiled. It was an accident. It'll be fine soon. Don't worry about it, young master. Xia Zhang suddenly widened his eyes, looking at me in disbelief, and asked, "What did you call me?" Xia Zhang must have been a bit hard of hearing. "Are you still angry? That jade rabbit pendant doesn't suit you either." I tried to recall for a moment and finally remembered that before Xia Zhang left on a business trip, we had argued. I had set my sights on a jade pendant. It was a small rabbit carved from white jade. Extremely cute. But I hadn't planned to buy it. I knew I couldn't afford it. But the shopkeeper insisted it was reserved for Xia Zhang and was meant to be a gift for me. In a few days, it would be my birthday. I mistakenly thought it was the birthday gift Xia Zhang had prepared for me. I ate the longevity noodles, smiled sweetly, and reached out to Xia Zhang, but all I got was his puzzled gaze. I had thought he was just teasing me. I pouted and acted cute, clinging to him and trying to win his favor. Now that I think about it, it was truly ridiculous. That wasn't the little rabbit for me. It was the jade rabbit for the moon in his heart. Though they were separated by vast distances, Xiaxing would prepare a birthday gift for her every year, never missing a single one. At that moment, Xiaxing thought I was still upset about it. I lowered my voice and said, I suppose Zhou girl hasn't had an easy life these past years. Now that she's finally returned, if she finds out you have a wife, another woman, how heartbroken she must be. Xiaxing furrowed his brows, staring at me blankly with a complicated expression. At that moment, Zhou Yingyue asked, Brother Xia, what are you talking to that maid about? I smiled faintly, waiting for Xiaxing to speak. After a moment, as expected, Xiaxing acknowledged my identity and said, Nothing. Zhou Yingyue giggled and pulled him away. Xiaxing let her pull him, not forgetting to gently protect her increasingly prominent belly. Watching their departing figures, I couldn't help but sigh. Xiaxing is truly magnanimous. Perhaps he loves her so much that he loves even her child with another man. Night fell. As I was packing my luggage, Xiaxing came over. It's not that I didn't want to leave earlier, but I didn't have enough money. Xiaxing hadn't given me any money. I sold off many items from the courtyard and spent quite some time doing so. Xiaxing said, Thank you for taking care of Yingyue these past days. Xiaxing looked at me, as if he wanted to say something else. Maybe he wanted to praise me. After all, I gave her the south-facing room and even took out a new quilt that I had never used. I also sold Xiaxing's clothes and had someone make her clothes out of brocade. All the maids in this mansion revolved around her. This way, Xiaxing wouldn't think that I treated her badly, right? I smiled and said, As long as Miss Zhou is comfortable, that's fine. Master Xia, please visit her more often when you have time. Xiaxing's expression froze, and there was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. Of course. He cherished Zhou Yingyue in his heart. Why should an outsider like me meddle? There were only the two of us here. You didn't need to call me that. I nodded, but didn't know how to address him. In the past, the two words I loved to say most were husband. I would whisper them in his ear, repeat them while lying in his arms, and even mutter them while clinging to his broad back. I said them in spring and summer, in autumn and winter. I said them when I missed him, and even when I had nothing else to do. I recited them at all times. But now, hearing those two words again made me feel as sick as if I had swallowed a fly. He was of noble birth, and calling him by his name seemed inappropriate. After much deliberation, I said nothing, but Xiaxing's gaze lingered on my lips, as if waiting for me to correct myself. I pretended not to notice. A moment later, Xiaxing sighed and said, I know you're still angry with me in your heart, but Yingyue has nowhere to go now. She said you're quick at work, so she asked me to let you be her personal maid. I blinked and asked, Did you agree? The answer was obvious. Xiaxing reassured me. Don't worry. Once she's settled down, I'll ask her to take you back. I didn't respond. Xiaxing saw my reluctance and his voice turned cold. Zhao Chuanyang, you were born into a lowly family, and even the maids in the Zhou mansion are more noble than you. Serving Yingyue is not a disgrace to you. Before he could finish, he finally noticed the bundle in my hands. At that sight, he fell silent. Xiaxing was tall and imposing, but his steps were light. He came suddenly, and I didn't have time to hide the bundle. I could only force myself to relax and chat with him. My heart was racing. The bundle contained the silver I had earned from selling goods. Xiaxing's expression darkened. I thought you had changed your ways. But it was all an act. Zhao Chuanyang. Let me tell you. Ingyue is staying here now. You can't take her away. I looked at him in surprise. In an instant, I realized he had misunderstood. The package was for myself, not for Zhou Ingyue. He probably never imagined I would leave this option. It's no wonder he thought that. Before he regained his identity, I was already deeply in love with him. After he regained his identity, I became even more anxious and fearful that he would abandon me. I clung to Xia Zhang, using his kindness to repay him. I wasted my entire life. Fortunately, I have now repented. However, I have taken it a bit too far, and now I feel sick when I look at Xia Zhang. But come to think of it, it doesn't matter. Xia Zhang knows about it, and he might even celebrate. For now, I took the opportunity to stuff the package into the wardrobe and nodded repeatedly. No, my lord, you are right. I won't chase her away. Xia Zhang seemed to be stunned by my quick response. Xia Zhang seemed stunned by my bluntness. His handsome phoenix eyes fixed on me. His breathing uneven. I was at a loss. What else did he want? Fortunately, he didn't linger. Sweeping his sleeves and leaving, clearly unwilling to speak further. I exhaled in relief. I felt the silver notes through the package, and my heart warmed. The next day, no one was home. The gatekeeper said that Xia Zhang and Zhou Ingyue had left early in the morning with a bunch of maids. They said they were going to buy some things for Zhou Ingyue. When Xia Zhang and I returned to the capital, he wasn't this considerate. Zhou Ingyue is a wealthy young lady, naturally. She is different from a country girl like me. On the third day, Xia Zhang and Zhou Ingyue went out for a spring outing. On the fourth day, Xia Zhang went to Zhou's family to support Zhou Ingyue. Zhou's family refused to acknowledge her as their daughter, but tacitly accepted Xia Zhang's claim that Zhou Ingyue was his distant cousin. The Xia family was furious but powerless to do anything. Fifth day. These days, Xia Zhang left early and returned late. I was busy preparing travel documents for myself and didn't see him once. Fortunately, he hadn't given me any official status. I am still alone, free to come and go as I please. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up from a beautiful dream, feeling as though ghosts are lurking by the window. This secluded courtyard is much smaller than the Xia family estate. But to me, it feels vast. I do not seek out Xia Zhang, and it seems we will never meet again. On the day I was to leave, Zhou Ingyue called me over. I stood in the rain-soaked courtyard for a long time before hearing her lazy voice from inside the house. Having just woken up, the autumn chill was biting. She was curled up on a bed covered with fur, and the silver-threaded charcoal fire in the room was burning brightly. The floor was covered with thick blankets. In just a month, she had become much more rounded than when she first came to the door that night. She said, "You don't need to hide anything from me anymore. Ah Jing told me everything. You are the woman he kept by his side out of a sense of obligation. You claimed to be his wife, but he never intended to marry you. Ah Jin is a gentleman, he couldn't bring himself to say it directly. So he asked me to tell you. He said, be sensible and know your place. He doesn't mind keeping you for life, you can be a first-class servant in the Xia household." These words didn't hurt me at all. I was orphaned at a young age and survived by begging. All these years, I've been struggling just to stay alive. I don't understand all the twists and turns, nor can I see the contempt Xia Zhang feels for me. I treated the male slave I bought as family and as someone to rely on, but I never considered whether he was willing. If I hadn't driven Zhou Ingyue away in my previous life, she would have told me this long ago. If I had realized sooner, would I have let go sooner? I regret driving Zhou Ingyue away even more now. I said sincerely, "Thank you, Miss Zhou, for your advice. I was indeed foolish before to fall in love with Lord Xia. Don't worry. Miss Zhou. I don't love him anymore. Zhou Yingyue stared at me intently, trying to read something from my face. Unfortunately, there was not a trace of disappointment or resentment on my face. As I left, I saw a figure behind her landscape screen. It must have been my imagination. Night fell. I calculated the time and was about to sneak out. Xiaixing suddenly arrived. Are you still holding a grudge against me? Zhao Chuanyang. I know you're unwilling, but our statuses are different. I cannot marry you. I was startled and hurriedly hid my belongings. In the past, whenever Xiaixing and I had a quarrel, it was usually me who went to make up first. My anger came quickly and faded just as fast. After making up, I was left with nothing but joy for Xiaixing and hurried to reconcile with him. This time, since I didn't go to him, did he think I was still angry? I replied half-heartedly. All right. All right. I understand. You don't need to trouble yourself. Xiaixing was speechless. I didn't believe his words. Though I hadn't read many books, I wasn't stupid. In the previous dynasty, there was an emperor who changed a woman's name and gave her a noble family to marry the woman he loved. Just like Xiaixing, who had gone to great lengths to keep Zhou Yingyue. If Xiaixing truly wanted to marry me, no matter how difficult it was, even if he failed in the end, he should at least try. Instead, he did nothing. But I didn't want to say more to him. I was in a hurry to leave. Xiaixing's eyes flashed with anger as he pulled me in front of him. Zhao Chuanyang, how long do you intend to keep this up? When I was close to Xiaixing in the past, I always felt there was an indescribable pleasant scent on him. But now, it's as if nothing remains. All that's left is the scent of Zhou Yingyue's perfume and a hint of sweat. Mixed together. It's nauseating. I tried to hold it back, but I couldn't, and I gagged. I pushed Xiaixing away with all my strength. Xiaixing looked at me in disbelief, unable to speak for a long time. I haven't learned much about propriety and morality. Since I became intimate with Xiaixing, I've become obsessed with his body. Xiaixing's expression darkened. His eyes betrayed a hint of panic he hadn't even noticed himself. Just then, Zhou Yingyue's maid rushed over in a panic. Miss Zhou! Miss Zhou is in terrible pain. Xiaixing no longer paid any attention to me and turned to leave. Before leaving, he left 2 sentences. You should calm down. Yingyue will eventually stay. Even if you leave, she won't go. I watched his hasty departure and felt puzzled. After all, I had never shown any dissatisfaction toward Zhou Yingyue in my entire life. Never mind. I won't think about it anymore. Now was the perfect time and place. Taking advantage of the chaos in the mansion, when everyone was busy with Zhou Yingyue, I sneaked out through a small door. The autumn wind was cool. I tightened the bundle on my body and couldn't help but smile. The mountains were high and the sky was far away. The autumn rain accompanied me on my journey. Zhou Yingyue was in terrible pain. Xiaixing rushed to the palace in the middle of the night to beg for a court physician. What he saw was his own older sister, now the Empress. Empress Xia snorted coldly. Zhou Yingyue isn't even as good as that Zhao Chuanyang. At least Zhao Chuanyang was innocent and had only eyes for you. Do you know why Zhou Yingyue returned? From where did she come back? Xiaixing had no mind to listen to this. He only begged Xia Empress to send a court physician to him quickly. Though furious, Xia Empress agreed to her most beloved younger brother's request. When the court physician arrived, Zhou Yingyue had already recovered somewhat. By the time everything had settled down, it was already deep into the night. Zhou Yingyue kept her eyes tightly closed, as if she had been plagued by a nightmare. She clung to Xiaixing's sleeve, refusing to let go, murmuring, "Ah Zheng, ah Zheng, save me." Xiaixing couldn't bear to leave. He still didn't know what Zhou Yingyue had gone through in the past few years. He couldn't bring himself to ask. Nor did he dare to ask. That stable hand must have been a heartless man. She had never done any manual labor since childhood. Unlike Zhao Chunyang, who was rough and tough. As a woman wandering alone in the world, how heartbreaking it must be for her. Xiaojing stayed by Zhou Yingyue's side until dawn the next day. Xiaojing stepped out of Zhou Yingyue's bedroom and saw the maidservant waiting outside. She had originally been by Zhao Chunyang's side. But Zhao Chunyang wasn't used to them. So after Zhou Yingyue arrived, they all moved to Zhou Yingyue's courtyard. Xiaojing suddenly asked, "Is she asleep?" The maid was startled and didn't understand what he was asking. Hadn't he just come out of Zhou Yingyue's room? Another more alert maid immediately realized what he meant. Xiaojing was asking about Zhao Chunyang. "Madam. No. There's no fire in her room. So she must have gone to bed long ago." The maid didn't know how to address Zhao Chunyang. Xiaojing looked at the rain in the courtyard and lost himself in thought. Yesterday, Zhao Chunyang had stood here for 3 hours. Yingyue had a bad temper and was angry that he had kept Zhao Chunyang by his side without telling her. And that there was now a connection between them. She said that if she hadn't been so young and ignorant back then and had left the capital, everything might have been different. When she said this, tears welled up in her eyes, making her look so pitiful. Xiaojing's heart melted like water. Since she wanted to vent her anger, let her vent it. After all, Zhao Chunyang could endure it. He remembered when he was first bought back by Zhao Chunyang. Zhao Chunyang had obtained a prescription to treat his injuries but couldn't afford the medicine. She climbed the mountain to gather the herbs herself. Suddenly, a torrential rain struck, causing the mountain to collapse. And she was swept off the cliff. She didn't die. It was only 3 hours of autumn rain, it shouldn't have been life-threatening. Xiaojing was in Zhou Yingyue's room, listening to the rain outside the window. He was just a door away from Zhao Chunyang. Zhou Yingyue leaned against him with a smile, telling him stories from their childhood. He listened to some of it, but not all of it. Seeing him distracted, Zhou Yingyue scolded him playfully. All right. I wasn't really trying to do anything. Zhao Chunyang did you a favor. After all, I'm not that unreasonable. I know you hate her for being ungrateful, but you're too shy to drive her away. But let me tell you, as a woman, I understand women's hearts better than you do. She might not be ignorant, she's just pretending to be ignorant to climb higher. Don't believe me? Let me test her. She called Zhao Chunyang in, and Xiaojing stepped behind the screen. After the test, all she got was one sentence from Zhao Chunyang. I don't like him anymore. Does she not like him anymore? Xiaojing found it hard to believe, but he felt an unexplainable sense of anxiety. After Zhao Chunyang left, Zhou Yingyue said angrily, Brother Xiaojing, don't let her deceive you. She's so cunning, playing hard to get with you. Xiaojing should have hated Zhao Chunyang's cunning schemes. But upon hearing the explanation of playing hard to get, he felt a secret joy in his heart. So she was playing hard to get. Xiaojing and Zhou Yingyue had their evening meal. Zhou Yingyue ate slowly and gracefully. Even after 5 years of wandering, she hadn't lost her manners. Unlike Zhao Chunyang, who ate greedily, as if afraid she wouldn't get enough. But Zhao Chunyang, who was like that, would deliberately say she was full to leave food for Xiaojing. She wasn't very good at lying. Xiaojing heard her stomach growling. Xiaojing thought of this and dropped his chopsticks. What kind of teasing game was Zhao Chunyang playing? He hurriedly stood up and rushed to Zhao Chunyang's courtyard. Zhou Yingyue called out to him twice from behind. But he didn't hear her. He naturally didn't see Zhou Yingyue angrily smash her bowl. The lamp cast flickering shadows. They illuminated Zhao Chunyang's familiar silhouette. She seemed to be packing Zhou Yingyue's belongings again. He had already said that Zhou Yingyue wouldn't leave. Xiaixing pushed open the door, and Zhao Chunyang looked startled. Xiaixing decided to talk to her clearly, telling her not to throw a tantrum anymore and not to play hard to get. Unexpectedly, Zhou Yingyue suddenly felt a stomachache, so he had to rush over to her first. By the time he had a chance to go again, it was already the next day. Xiaixing didn't ask the maids anything and decided to go see Zhao Chunyang himself. Zhao Chunyang's room was very remote. It was so remote that the door next to it was the back door of a long-abandoned courtyard. When Zhou Yingyue arrived, Zhao Chunyang gave up her own large room for her. When Xiaixing returned and heard about this, he thought she was being considerate. But now, when he thought about it again, something didn't feel right. He thought about it for a long time and finally figured out what was wrong. When he first returned to the capital, he hadn't brought Zhao Chunyang back to the Xie family, but instead brought her to this secluded courtyard on the outskirts of the city. How could he possibly bring her back to the Xie family? He couldn't marry a woman of such low status. Someone like Zhao Chunyang wasn't even suitable to be a concubine. But Zhao Chunyang was truly naive, believing the small villa was his home. When she moved into the large house, she was overjoyed. She said she had never lived in such a spacious room and wanted to stay there forever. As she spoke, she glanced at Xiaixing. Seeing he didn't object and nodded, she grew even happier. She knew nothing. She didn't know that Xiaixing only regarded this place as a temporary resting spot, and that the Xie family estate was his true home. But for some reason, year after year, Xiaixing stayed at this temporary residence for longer and longer periods of time. Every time he returned from a bandit raid, this was the first place he came to. Perhaps it was because this place was on the outskirts of the city, and geographically speaking, one had to pass by here to reach the Xie family home. That was how Xiaixing explained it to himself. Everyone in the capital knew that Zhao Chunyang was merely Xiaixing's concubine, yet she herself was unaware of it. When she attended banquets, others treated her like a monkey. Yet, it took her a very long time to realize something was amiss. After all, she had a mother who gave birth to her but no mother to teach her. If it weren't for the neighbors occasionally taking pity on her and teaching her some basic moral principles, and if she hadn't bought back Xiaixing, she was no different from the beasts in the mountains. But how could Zhao Chunyang, who loved that big house so much, bear to give it up to Zhou Yingyue the moment she arrived? Xiaixing's steps grew faster. The courtyard was so small, yet the path to Zhao Chunyang's small house felt endless. So long that he had to run. Finally, he reached the small house. Everything was quiet around him. The autumn rain had just stopped. Water was still dripping from the eaves. Xiaixing suddenly pushed open the door. Zhao Chunyang was still in bed. Xiaixing let out a sigh of relief. His heart, which had been pounding, finally settled back into place. Why isn't she getting up? Did she not sleep well last night? Xiaixing said as he walked over. The person in bed didn't respond, only burying herself deeper under the blankets. Xiaixing froze for a moment, then took 3 steps into and walked to the bed. He pulled back the blanket. There were only 2 pillows inside, propping up the outline of the blanket. Xiaixing walked out of the house and saw the narrow back door. It was wide open. The autumn wind blew, making it creak. Xiaixing stared at the door, unable to snap out of his trance for a long time. When Xiaixing sent someone to look for Zhao Chunyang, Zhou Yingyue heard the news and came over. It turned out that Xiaixing had sent all the maids who had been massaging her feet out. She didn't say much, only saying, "Hurry up and look for her. Zhao Chunyang has been by your side for so long. She must be upset that I suddenly appeared like this." That's right. He's kept Zhao Chunyang by his side for too long, making her get too big for her britches. Don't worry, Brother Zhen. Zhao Chunyang is more capable than me. She's just sulking and ran off. She'll take care of herself. Xiaixin felt slightly reassured. Before she met him, Zhao Chunyang was alone, and she managed to get by. Once she calms down and comes to her senses, she'll definitely come back. She wouldn't give up the Xie family's wealth and prestige. Even if she could, she wouldn't give up him. As she left, Zhou Yingyue almost fell down, revealing her swollen ankles. Xiaixing didn't hesitate and called back the people he had sent out. The most important thing now was Yingyue and her child. The day of childbirth was fast approaching. However, news of the enemy nation's restless movements reached the border once again. Xiaixing was summoned to the palace several times in the middle of the night. He had no time to spare for Zhao Chunyang. Given her temperament, she should return within 3 days. That was what Xiaixing believed. But he did not know. The woman who once clung to him had long since set off for the vast world. She only hoped that no more letters would be sent, and that she could part with him forever. I did not return to my original small mountain village, but went to the frontier. I wanted to find my parents. The old woman in the village said that I was brought there by a man who was missing an arm and a leg. He said I was the child of his comrade in arms. My mother had followed the army to the frontier and died upon hearing of my father's death. He brought me here to find our relatives. Alas, he didn't last long and left me behind, passing away. He left me only a name, Zhao Chunyang. I longed for spring to come soon and for the war to end. There were too many graves here, I couldn't find my parents. I set up a stall and searched slowly. That's how I settled down in this remote border town. My stall sells noodles and dumplings, and sometimes I mend clothes for people. It doesn't make much money. I hid the few hundred taels of silver I brought with me. I've never lived a good life, so I'm not afraid of poverty. Until the end of the year, the long-dormant war flared up again. But supplies didn't arrive. I heard that the general who was supposed to come had been replaced halfway there. So everything was delayed. The new general hadn't arrived yet. The troops defending the border were suffering defeat after defeat. I gritted my teeth, took out half of my silver, and threw it at the camp gate in the middle of the night. I didn't know if it would help, but I wanted to do my part. It was something I had obtained easily, so I didn't feel too bad about giving it away. The new general was surnamed Wei. It was a 10-day journey from here to the capital, and he had ridden 3 horses to death, arriving alone ahead of the others. With a leader in command, he quickly stabilized the troops' morale. I heard a customer eating noodles at my stall say that General Wei was only 17 years old. Yet he was no less capable than the former General Xia. This General Xia must be referring to Xiaixing, right? Someone shouted. I think General Wei is better than General Xia. Someone else objected. General Xia is also a general who protects the country, you shouldn't speak like that. The first person replied meaningfully. You don't know, the one who was originally supposed to come was General Xia. Why didn't he come? Why? I pricked up my ears to listen. I don't like Xiaixing, but I like hearing gossip. A crowd of people were just as curious as me and urged the man to continue. The man said that his relative's relative had gone through a series of twists and turns and ended up working as a maid in one of General Xia's side courtyards. In that courtyard lived a woman who was the apple of General Xia's eye. It is said that the two were once engaged. But when General Xia went to war, his fiancée ran off with the family's stable hand. So what? Many people didn't understand. The person no longer held back and said, that stable hand wasn't a stable hand. He was a prince from the enemy country in disguise. Everyone gasped in shock. The prince had seduced General Xia's fiancée to disrupt his troops' morale. The plan succeeded. General Xia was severely wounded and went missing for 2 years before returning. General Wei's father, despite his advanced age, returned to the battlefield, stabilized the situation, and drove the enemy forces back. The enemy nation remained quiet for several years before hatching another scheme. They sent General Xia's fiancée back as a spy. Someone exclaimed indignantly. How dare she help those traitors? What else could she do? General Xia's fiancé had lived a life of luxury for the past 2 years, had become completely devoted to the prince, and had even given birth to his son. When she returned, she was pregnant with another child. General Xia was halfway there when the emperor had the matter investigated and arrested his fiancé, who was about to leave. When she confessed, she said that if she could bring back the intelligence, the prince would make her his official wife and never look at the other concubines again. How foolish! That was why Xiaojing was summoned back. I suddenly understood and couldn't help but sigh. If he hadn't been summoned back, perhaps I would have seen him again. Fortunately, it turned out well. After listening to the story, I was about to continue, but the person started talking about the gossip in Xiaojing's villa again. He even mentioned me. He said that before Xiaojing left, he had been looking for a woman. He said that the woman was his wife, and he wanted to use the power of the government to find her. Unfortunately, he had never married that woman. The government wanted to help him but couldn't go through the proper channels, so they could only let him find her himself. The person telling the gossip looked down on him, saying, General Xia drove away his own wife for that female spy. When the female spy arrived, everything in the house was given to her, and his wife had no status. Later, she even had to give up her room and food. His wife had even saved his life. The crowd was in an uproar. Finally, someone summarized with a sigh. His household is in disarray, and he can't even manage his own affairs. General Xia is indeed unsuitable for battle. General Wei is far more capable. After hearing the gossip, I was satisfied. But after packing up my stall, I saw a young man with an imposing presence standing before me. My surname is Wei, and my name is Ding Bei. He was even more handsome than Xiaojing. He was also much younger than Xiaojing, but his aura was no less imposing than Xiaojing's. He clearly had the bearing of a brave general. He addressed me, Miss Zhao. I snapped back to reality and took a step back in fright. Those who have tasted blood are different from those who haven't. Wei Dingbei scratched his head, looking a bit embarrassed. Did I scare you? I came to thank you. The sentry saw you throw silver coins in the middle of the night and told me about it. I thought you must not want to be seen, so I came alone. Saying this, he held up the skinned wild rabbit and mountain chicken in his hands, trying to hand them to me. I hurriedly waved my hands, no. No. After some polite exchanges, the items ended up in my hands. As he left, he waved at me and said, If you ever have any trouble, come find me. If there's anything you want, you can also come find me. I don't want anything. I just want the war to end quickly so everyone can be safe. There should be fewer Zhao Chenyangs in the world. Perhaps since I was born, heaven had never granted my wish. But this wish had come true. Half a year later, the war came to an end. Wei Dingbei returned victorious. The military camp was filled with joy. They celebrated all night, singing and dancing, drinking heartily. This remote border town was filled with a joyful atmosphere. At night, everyone set up stalls. My small blanket was also laid out under the moonlit sky. Wei Dingbei came to my stall and asked for a bowl of dumpling noodles. He was already a familiar face to me. Over the past half year, every time he returned from battle, he would come to my stall for a bowl. I served him a generous portion. He always paid for 2 bowls. At that moment, he looked at me with sparkling eyes and said, Miss Zhao, I'm returning to the capital. Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. I replied happily, It's us who should thank you. The candlelight flickered. Suddenly, someone appeared between Wei Dingbei and me. Zhao Chuanyang, Xiaojing, whom I hadn't seen in over half a year, was standing right in front of me. I've been searching for you everywhere. Xiaojing had lost a lot of weight. And because it was so dark, I studied him for a moment before realizing who he was. In the blink of an eye, Wei Dingbei had put down his bowl and stood in front of me. Xia Zhang's gaze toward Wei Dingbei was icy cold. He said to me, "Are you still angry with me? Why didn't you come back?" I hadn't expected Xia Zhang to come looking for me. I felt that I wasn't very important to him. It was all my one-sided affection. Seeing him appear before me now, I felt no stirrings of emotion or joy. I just felt confused. I explained to him, "I'm not angry." Xia Zhang looked doubtful, but he seemed to relax a little. But then I added, "I don't plan on going back either." Xia Zhang's face darkened. He stared at me, seemingly unable to believe what I had said. He said, "If you don't like Yingyue, she's no longer in this mansion. Come back with me, and you can still live in that big room." I shook my head and said, "I still prefer to live in my own little room." Seeing that I was unmoved, Xia Zhang looked a little panicked. But he still wouldn't give up. "If you want a bigger room, I have one." I didn't want to deal with him and continued packing up my stall. He reached out to grab me, but was stopped by Wei Dingbei. The two seemed to know each other. Xia Zhang glared at him and said, "Wei Xiaojun, this is my family matter." Wei Dingbei raised an eyebrow and said, "This is also my family matter." Xia Zhang's face tensed up. The two of them suddenly started fighting. I hugged the valuable bowls and chopsticks on my stall and hurried to a safe place. After that day, every time Xia Zhang came, Wei Dingbei would fight with him. Fortunately, there wasn't much going on now, and Wei Dingbei wasn't busy either. He spent the whole day at my stall, waiting for Xia Zhang. One day, when Xia Zhang arrived, my stall was crowded with people. Suddenly, someone seemed to recognize Xia Zhang and pointed at him, exclaiming, "Isn't that General Xia?" General Xia came all the way here looking for Miss Zhao. Could she be the wife he drove away? Everyone realized what was happening. They were all regular customers and began to speak up for me. "You drove her away back then, and now you want to come back and eat the fruit of your labor? You have no shame. That girl saved your life. And you not only treated her like a mistress but also let her be bullied by your spy lover. How could there be such a man? Now you have the nerve to come back and ask the girl to go with you. In my opinion, you should give Zhao girl more silver as compensation. Zhao girl is foolish to go back with him." Everyone chattered away, each adding their own comments, leaving Xia Zhang's face ashen. But surprisingly, Xia Zhang didn't leave. In fact, he sat down and ordered a bowl of noodles. I deliberately gave him an undercooked bowl. He didn't even blink as he ate it. He ate every last bit. He ignored all the teasing and accusations, focusing only on me. Since he wasn't causing trouble, Wei Dingbei didn't dare to act. But Wei Dingbei knew how to provoke Xia Zhang, so he deliberately helped me knead the dough, roll out the noodles, and wrap the dumplings. He stood very close to me, appearing quite intimate. Xia Zhang clenched his fists. I said, "If you ruin my stall, I'll be even more annoyed with you." Xia Zhang's fists relaxed, and he looked at me helplessly, as if he were very wronged. Night fell. I pushed the cart back, with Xia Zhang following behind me. I told Wei Dingbei to go back. I could handle this myself. I opened the door and let Xia Zhang come in. Xia Zhang's eyes lit up, and he was about to take a step forward. But he stopped when I said, "Let's talk." He seemed to know what I wanted to discuss with him. It was like the last meal before execution. He didn't want to eat it, but not eating it wouldn't let him escape. He eventually walked in. I got straight to the point. "You must already know what I plan to do now. I definitely won't go with you. If you insist on taking me, I'll report you to the authorities." I spoke bluntly, and Xia Zhang's face fell. He gave a wry smile and said, "Zhao Chunyang, I can marry you. I've actually been planning this for a long time. Once you're pregnant with our child, I can marry you legitimately." There was some truth to his words. I almost believed him. Later, I thought carefully about the events of my previous life. Everyone knew Zhou Yingyue's secret. Yet it wasn't until I mentioned it that it spread throughout the streets and alleys. Known to all. The person who told me this secret seemed to have deliberately approached me to say it. I suspected that the Xie family was behind it. They looked down on me. But they despised Zhou Yingyue even more for carrying another man's child. Killing two birds with one stone. Use me to drive Zhou Yingyue away. Then use Zhou Yingyue to make Xiaojing despise me. In my previous life, it was strange. Although Xiaojing despised me, he never drove me away. In fact, he never agreed to marry me. And we remained entangled in an unclear relationship for over a decade. I believed Xiaojing might truly marry me. But I no longer cared. Xiaojing's gaze lingered on my face. Inch by inch. Trying to find a trace of joy. Alas. He found nothing. The light in his eyes gradually faded. Before I sent him off, he said, "Zhao Chunyang, can I still come visit you?" I didn't want him to come. I told him honestly. "Actually, seeing you makes me feel a little sick." Xiaojing's face had never looked so vivid. It was pale and green. His hands trembled as he held the teacup. When he left, his steps were unsteady. A few days later, Wei Dingbei also had to return to the capital to report. Before he left, I slipped the knee pads I had made for him into his hands and said, "I truly consider you my younger brother." Wei Dingbei paused. A flash of disappointment in his eyes. But he still managed to give me a smile. Thank you, Zhao's sister." Not long after, I didn't expect Xiaojing to appear again. He said he had been disgraced by the emperor and had voluntarily requested to be stationed at the border. It was both atonement for the soldiers at the border and atonement for me. This way, he could visit me often in the future. I was speechless and didn't dare tell him that I had already found my parents' graves and planned to bring them back to our hometown. He didn't need to atone to me. The love affair of my past life was but a dream. I no longer wish to dwell on right or wrong. In this life, I have taken so much of his silver, I do not wish to hate him anymore, nor to let him occupy my heart in vain. There is no separation in this world. All that has passed is but a dream. Now the dream has ended. I wish to return, to traverse mountains and rivers,